Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Alissa. This quarter, we'll be shifting our focus to a new topic, health and wealth. Dr. Dan Turo of Turo Family Chiropractic in the North Hills of Pittsburgh is joining us for a three-part series on how your physical, biochemical, and relational health impact your ability to grow and sustain your wealth. Dr. Dan doesn't just do traditional chiropractic work. He's the only certified Pierce Results System practitioner in Southwestern PA. This unique type of chiropractic work includes the use of dynamic motion x-rays to view your spine motion in real time, and infrared thermography scans to show nervous system function. This leads to targeted and customized treatment and optimal results. He's put a lot of time into producing articles and videos and a free book that we will certainly put out there if you'd like to get a copy, because he truly believes in achieving holistic wellness. And I can speak for myself and my family that he's helped us out a lot. So I wanted to bring him on to have this conversation. Dan, thanks so much for joining us for this interview series.
Thank you so much, Alissa, for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity, as always.
So let's start with the basics. What is health?
So excellent question. That's where, I always like to start with this, the old adage of begin with the end in mind, because, so many people, when I'm discussing them, new client comes into the office, or I'm giving talks at a church or community organization. I always ask, what that definition is, and a lot of times, I feel good, right? So a lot of times, the idea of just feeling good, or the idea of, I'm not taking any medications, or I don't have any illness, and the absence of signs or symptoms, the absence of pain, the absence or just feeling good. That's really the definition of a sick care system, which I think we are all a part of in our society. We call our health care, which is really wrapped up in more of a sick care system. It's the idea that if you don't have any signs or symptoms, don't have any pain, you feel good, then you're a healthy individual. The challenge with that is it doesn't really bring to light the functional aspect of who we are, as individuals and as beings, or humans that have the ability to heal and be healthy. So the simplest one of the simplest examples that I use is if you cut your finger, right, you don't have to think or do anything about that cut. You can clean it out, you can put a Band-Aid on it, but ultimately that cut is going to heal itself. So we have an intelligence that governs much of this healing ability. And so I always use one word answer to define health and well-being. It really comes down to adaptation. Okay, if your body has the ability to adapt, then you are a healthy individual. You go outside on a hot summer day, you have to start sweating to keep your body at a good, healthy temperature. Go outside on a very cold day, you have to start shivering to keep your body temperature up. Those are two very simple examples, but we have hundreds of millions of those biochemical adaptations happening internally. So those people that have the ability to adapt to an internal and external environment are the healthiest individuals in the world. And so that really transcends this idea of a sick care system. Hey, I feel good, therefore I'm healthy, versus the idea of you may be experiencing a sign or a symptom. I used right before we jumped on, we were talking about how my son and daughter, got exposed to some sort of stomach virus this past week. So they started vomiting. And, I use this example in my book, and, it's not fun to talk about a sign or a symptom like that. But, a lot of people would say, well, someone who is vomiting, well, that's a sick individual. But no, that's a healthy, normal adaptation. If you're exposed to a stomach virus, your body is trying to expel that virus. And so that sign or a symptom is actually a healthy adaptation. It's a healthy response to dealing with an external environmental factor. So I think that changing the idea of how we view health is what is really going to help us, change, the system of healthcare. I think it has made great strides in the past several decades, but unfortunately, in the United States, more drugs, more surgery, which is, really the healthcare, the sick care system that we live in, that does not equal more health, right? It really comes down to, more drugs, more surgery. We spend probably about 95% of, we take about 90% of the world's pharmaceuticals in the United States, and yet we're only 5% of the population. So if more pharmaceuticals equaled better health, well, we would be the healthiest nation on earth, hands down. And yet we're not. Related to other, economically developed countries. We actually rate below, usually depending on year to year, it changes, but usually we're rating below Chile and Cuba and, some of these other, underdeveloped countries compared to the United States. And so we have to start to change our idea of what health actually is, in terms of being able to achieve it, right? Just like you sit down with a client and you want to start mapping out their goals. It's like the client comes to you and say, hey, I want to make more money or earn more money or save more money for retirement. Well, you have to really start to hash in, what is it that you want to achieve? What does retirement look like for you? So in the same respect, I have to start talking to my clients about, well, what is it that you're looking for in life, and how do we really get healthy and stay healthy? Because so many of us, we just kind of go through life and we do what our insurance tells us or what our primary care doctor tells us, and it really has nothing to do with health and well-being. So just by virtue of changing that understanding of helping someone adapt better and function better, that's how we're going to that's how we really start to get healthy and stay healthy.
So you mentioned something interesting that, like when you were talking about the virus, us not really being sick, right? But that's just our body's way of expelling the virus. So are we designed for health or illness?
So that's, again, a fantastic question to start to understand it. Well, what is the difference of being healthy or being sick? And, I feel in the majority of examples that I see come into my office, a lot of times someone who's kind of stuck in this, they have this symptom going on. Let's use acid reflux for an example. So they come in, they're having a lot of acid reflux. Maybe it's worse at night. A lot of burning sensation here in their throat. And so, we start to, have a conversation. Well, there's two ways of treating that, right? There's two, from two different paradigms, I guess you can treat it from. So if you believe that is an illness, okay, and that person is suffering with that illness, well, if we give them some medication to stop the burning sensation, stop the reflux, well, in the sick care paradigm, we would say, well, we've effectively treated that illness, and we've been successful with that. The problem is when you take that medication and start to dampen the body's normal, healthy response of creating stomach acid, right? You would say that we need stomach acid to digest our food. Yes or yes?
Yeah.
So we need that stomach acid. It's there for a reason. So, it's the body's normal healthy response. So we have to understand, well, why is the stomach acid getting out of the stomach and coming up into the esophagus? It could be because of a misfunctional or dysfunctional valve. It could be that, the patient is overeating all the wrong kinds of foods, high fats or, high carbohydrates, and they're overeating. It's just, they're getting very bloated, and then they're laying down at night, they're eating too close to bedtime. So there's so many different factors that come into play there of why that symptom is there. It's the fire alarm going off, that reflux, that burning sensation, that's the body's signal telling you, like, hey, something is wrong. But what do we do in the sick care? The idea with medication, we want to take a cover and cover or mask the alarm that's going on. That would be like, trying to just, ignoring the fire that's going on in our house and just taking the batteries out of our fire detectors. Well, that's not safe and healthy in the long run. We want to get to the bottom of, well, why is that there? So, so that idea of, we're ultimately designed for health and well-being. Okay, we're designed to be healthy. Our body is constantly trying to keep us in a state of health, as long as we have a healthy functioning nervous system. Okay, that's what we talk so much about in my office, is the brain, the spinal cord, and nerves that stem out from there. Your brain and nervous system communicate, coordinate every other function in your body. So if you're keeping that healthy, keeping that optimized, then you have the ability to achieve health and well-being. And that's so much of what we do, is trying to get to the bottom of why are you having these signs and symptoms, and how can we help to get you back to being healthy.
I think that's really great. I think a lot of health issues probably end up being stress related, and we don't even know it. So what is stress? Is it good? Is it bad?
So if we look at, again, I got into it a little bit earlier, but when we talk about, illness, ultimately we're all going to die, right? I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but ultimately, we're all going to pass from this life and, on to the next. So the idea of, well, what happens? What does that life look like? Many times, people look at this idea of aging and this accelerated, rapid decline of aging. I think it's very unfortunate anymore. I have these conversations when I go out and speak to people. I'll ask, well, who wants to live to 100 years old? And almost no one raises their hand. And why is that? Because the idea of living a long age, a long time, making that 100-year mark, has been associated with a very rapid decline in their health and their quality of life. And so then once I start talking about some of these principles of getting healthy and staying healthy, and I say, well, if we could assure your quality of life for 100 years, would you want to live to 100? And then, of course, everyone changes their mind and says, well, yeah, if you can assure my quality of life, yes, I want to live a long, healthy life. And so this idea of stress, unfortunately, 90% of cancer, heart disease, all the major killers, the large killers of early death or early decline in our society, 90% of them are related to lifestyle and what we do to ourselves, how we're eating, how we're sitting, how we're thinking. It has much to do with our lifestyle and environmental factors. So, but that's the good news, because we have the ability to change that. So stress is merely the idea of, you're putting a stress or a strain. It's the idea that you're having to add stress. You have to do that in order to grow, right? So if you don't have stress on a muscle, it never grows. If you don't stress your immune system out a little bit time and again, then your immune system doesn't get stronger. So this idea that we have to stress our bodies, to grow and to get stronger and to get healthier. This idea that it's bad for you, not too much. If you put too much stress on a rubber band for too long, it's never going to go back to its original shape. But this idea of little guided areas of stress, on a daily basis is very important. Seeing kind of an idea getting into the more health or the wealth side of things, right? If you don't stress your finances from a little bit, the idea of, okay, well, I'm not going to go out and buy that extra cup of coffee, or I'm not going to go out and take that luxury vacation, or I'm going to just be very, very conscious of how I'm spending my money. That can be a little bit of a stress, but it's a self-induced stress. And the reason you're doing that is because you're, putting money away so that it can hopefully invest and grow and save, so that you can get to a quality of life that you ultimately want to. So that, that little bit of, avoiding instant gratification, for long-term gain, that's the idea of, is it good or bad? And I think a really easy way to say is, instant gratification, am I going to eat that donut today, or am I going to, put it aside and pick a healthier option, have some eggs and toast? That's the idea of avoiding that instant gratification for a long-term gain in terms of your health and well-being. So this idea of stress is inevitable. We all experience it. So I think a matter of how are you implementing it day in and day out has a big factor on ultimately what your your wealth and your health is going to look like.
That was great, and I really appreciate you like diving into these definitions, things that I think we've defined one way in our culture, but really you've just kind of opened them up to for us to think a different way. So what can we do with all of this?
I think that once you start again, I'm just, we're just scratching the surface today, right? I always, my wife always smacks me like that. Dr. Dan, you need to be quiet. She doesn't call me Dr. Dan, but it's like, Dan, shut up. You need to move on. But again, we could have these conversations for hours and, really dive into the philosophy and the understanding and the systems that we're set up in. Again, even in your own field with wealth accumulation and financial advising, there's a lot of different ways and avenues to get there, right? But ultimately, how do we achieve health and well-being? How do we optimize our body's ability to adapt to its environment? One of the first ways is assessment and advocacy. Really, I put it into my ABCs. Okay, so assessing your body regularly, but that also, coming down to the questions of what are you assessing? As a chiropractor, I'm trying to get to the bottom of the spine. How is the spine moving and aligned? Because the movement and alignment of your spine is intimately related to your nervous system. Your nervous system is your master control and communication system in your body. So if your nervous system is functioning optimally, then there's a very good chance that your body is functioning at an optimal level of adaptation. When we're assessing your health and well-being, you have to look at different parameters. You can't just pick one doctor. You can't just go to a colon specialist, have your colon analyzed once every 5 years, and say, okay, no colon cancer. Either cancer's there or it's not there, right? It's like that's an assessment, and probably an assessment that everyone could benefit from, especially towards the later stages of life. But is that the only thing that you're doing? So I always, use the example of people coming into my office. If they are only, assessing the things that their insurance will reimburse for, okay, you are really missing the boat in terms of a holistic picture of your health and well-being. Okay, again, not that they're bad things, but if you go into your primary care doctor and they're measuring your height and your weight, really, once you reach a certain height, they're looking more at weight, especially as we get into our 30s, 40s, and beyond, and how is that going up or down? But if you're only assessing the weight, you're missing a lot of other factors, because you can go and Google, difference between a bodybuilder and, someone who's morbidly obese. They may be the exact same weight, but their body fat content is significantly different. So again, it's what are you assessing, and making sure that you have a team around the proper assessments to be able to build and grow. And so that's actually the B then, moving from assessment. We're then going to build a team of healthcare providers, just like you hopefully have a team of financial professionals that you're working with to help grow your wealth. You have a team of healthcare professionals who are looking at your health from a number of different directions to help make the best decisions and the best plan put in place so that you can ultimately achieve what you're looking for, which is, a lot of people, they're just looking to get healthy and stay healthy. So, that assessment, understanding what you're assessing on a regular basis, the building the proper team, and then ultimately you have to communicate regularly, right? And I know that you communicate with your clients on a regular basis. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly. Same idea, a once a year check-in with a primary care provider, although good, again, I think you're vastly missing the mark in terms of how do you ultimately get healthy and stay healthy, rather than having someone that you're an individual or multiple individuals that you're checking in with on a much more regular basis. So you need to make sure that you're communicating regularly with the team that you built, ultimately to truly achieve that optimal level of health.
So, well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to breaking down all of the factors of health with you and learning how they impact our financial well-being. To our audience, thank you for joining us, and please join us next month for a video on the effects of physical and biochemical factors.